Welcome to Revenge Vine. Today's story is one I never thought I'd have the courage to tell out loud. My name is Leah Brennan, and I'm 29 years old. By the time my mother clinked her champagne glass and stood up to make her little announcement at Christmas Eve dinner, I already knew this wasn't about celebrating the holidays. It was a coordinated shakedown, dressed in garland and cinnamon candles. My father sat at the head of the table, looking like a man who had rehearsed his silence. My brother sat across from me in a brand new Rolex he definitely couldn't afford, grinning like someone who already knew the punchline. There were about 45 people crammed into my grandmother's house in Savannah. Aunts, uncles, cousins, my brother's wife's family, neighbors from the church, people who showed up every year for the free ham and the spectacle of watching the Brennan family perform togetherness. Then my mother raised her glass and said, "This year, we have something truly special to celebrate. Leah has generously decided to invest $95,000 from her savings into Tyler's new business venture. Family takes care of family." She looked at me and smiled like I was supposed to stand up and take a bow. I had agreed to nothing. I had never been asked. And the number she quoted was almost exactly what I had saved for a down payment on my first home. Before I tell you what happened next and how my family lost nearly everything trying to take what was mine, tell me what time is it where you are right now, and where are you watching from? Drop it in the comments. I want to see how far this story reaches. What happened next was silence. My silence. Because when 45 people turn to look at you like you're supposed to confirm a lie, your brain needs a second to catch up with the ambush. My brother raised his glass. "To Leah," he said. "The smartest person in this family finally putting her money where it matters." A few relatives clapped. My Aunt Diane actually said "aw." My grandmother, who was 81 and had been declining for 2 years, patted my hand from her wheelchair and whispered, "That's my good girl." And that was the part that made my stomach drop. Because my grandmother believed it. They had already told her. I set my fork down and said, very quietly, "I didn't agree to this." The table didn't go silent all at once. It rippled. People closest to me heard it first. Then my mother's smile tightened. "Leah, sweetheart, we talked about this." "No," I said. "You talked. I never agreed to give Tyler anything." My brother laughed the way he always laughed when I challenged him like I was a puppy doing something cute. "Come on, Lee. Don't make this weird. It's Christmas." My father finally spoke. "Leah, this is not the time or place. We discussed the family plan, and you know what's expected." I looked him in the eye. "What's expected is that I hand over my entire down payment so Tyler can play entrepreneur for the third time." The room cracked right down the middle. Half the people looked uncomfortable. The other half looked fascinated. My mother walked around the table, leaned down next to me, and whispered loud enough for the nearest 10 people to hear. "If you embarrass this family tonight, you will not be welcome in this house again." I whispered back, "This isn't your house. It's Grandma's." She straightened up like I had slapped her. That was always the raw nerve. The house belonged to my grandmother, not my parents. But they had been running it and running her like it was already theirs. My brother's wife, Kelsey, tried to smooth things over. "Leah, I think what everyone's trying to say is that this is a really generous thing you're doing and we appreciate it." I looked at her. "I'm not doing it. That's what I'm trying to say." Tyler stood up. "Okay, enough. Dad, can you handle this?" My father pushed back his chair, walked to the kitchen, and came back holding a manila folder. He set it on the table in front of me and opened it to a page with a yellow signature tab. "This is a formal loan agreement. Your mother and I structured it so you're protected. 5 years, no interest, standard terms. Just sign it and we can get back to dinner." I stared at the document. It had my grandmother's signature on the bottom as a guarantor. I looked at her. She smiled at me like she had no idea what she had signed. And she probably didn't. My grandmother had been showing signs of cognitive decline for 2 years. She forgot names. She forgot whether she'd eaten. She sometimes called me by my mother's name. And someone had put a pen in her hand and told her to sign a financial guarantee. That was the moment the anger arrived. Not hot anger. Cold anger. The kind that makes your vision sharpen instead of blur. I closed the folder, stood up, and said, "I'm not signing anything. And if anyone in this room used Grandma's condition to get her signature on a financial document, that's not a family plan, that's elder fraud." You could hear a serving spoon hit the floor somewhere near the kitchen. My mother's face went from commanding to terrified in under a second. My father grabbed my arm. "Sit down and stop being dramatic." I pulled my arm free and said clearly, so the whole table could hear, "Take your hand off me, or I'm calling 911 from this table and letting them sort out who's being dramatic." He let go. My cousin Jared, who was a deputy sheriff and had been eating quietly in the corner, looked up from his plate and said, "She's right, Uncle Bill. You can't grab people." God bless Jared. My father sat down. For the first time in my life, I saw him look small. I picked up my bag and walked to the front door. Tyler called after me. "You're seriously going to blow up Christmas over money? Over a loan?" I turned around. It's not a loan if I never agreed to it. And it's not family if you have to trap someone into participating. I looked at my grandmother one more time. She looked confused. She looked scared. And she had no idea why everyone was upset. That image burned into me harder than anything else that night. I stepped outside into the cold Savannah evening, sat in my car, and called the non-emergency police line before I even started the engine. I told them exactly what I suspected, that a cognitively impaired elderly woman may have been coerced into signing a financial guarantee she didn't understand. They took a report. They told me to contact Adult Protective Services on Monday. I did both. Then I drove to a Holiday Inn, checked in, sat on the bed, and let my hands shake for about 20 minutes. Not from fear. From the weight of what I had just done. I had broken the one rule my family ran on. Never make the Brennans look bad in front of company. But here's the thing about that rule, it only works if everyone agrees to be humiliated in private. The moment you refuse, the rule collapses. And the people who enforced it panic. By midnight, my phone was a disaster. 41 missed calls. My mother left a voicemail that started with, "How dare you say those things about this family," and ended with, "Your grandmother is heartbroken. I hope you're happy." Tyler texted, "Nice job ruining Christmas for a 81-year-old woman. Real classy Lee." My father sent one text, "Call me. Now." I didn't answer any of them. Instead, I did what 7 years of forensic accounting had trained me to do. I documented everything, screenshots of every text, saved every voicemail to cloud storage, pulled my credit report and froze it, changed my bank passwords, requested a copy of my grandmother's recent financial activity through the power of attorney she had given me 3 years earlier. A power of attorney my parents didn't know still existed because they assumed I had never actually filed it. I had, and I had renewed it, because even then, I suspected something was wrong. The next morning, Christmas Day, I sat alone in that hotel room with a cup of gas station coffee and my laptop, and I pulled my grandmother's bank records. What I found made me sick. Over the past 18 months, someone had been making withdrawals from my grandmother's savings account. Small amounts at first, $500 here, $1,200 there. Then larger, $5,000, $8,000, $12,000 in a single month. The total came to just over $74,000. The withdrawals were made at branches across Savannah, all during business hours, all signed with my grandmother's name. But I knew my grandmother hadn't driven a car in 3 years. She couldn't go to a bank alone. Someone had taken her there. Someone had coached her. Someone had stood beside her and smiled while an old woman with fading memory signed away her retirement. I cross-referenced the dates with my mother's social media. On 6 of those dates, my mother posted photos from the exact area of town where the withdrawals were made. Lunch at a cafe 2 blocks from the bank. Shopping at a boutique next door. Selfie in the car with grandma, caption "Girls' Day Out with my favorite lady." She had turned financial exploitation into an Instagram aesthetic. I called my college friend Marcus, who was a licensed attorney specializing in elder law. I told him everything. He went quiet for about 10 seconds, and then said, "Leah, this is textbook. Don't confront them yet. Let me help you build the file first." So that's what we did. For 4 days, I gathered records, flagged transactions, documented my grandmother's medical history, including her doctor's notes about cognitive decline, and assembled everything into a timeline so clean it could survive a courtroom. Meanwhile, my family kept calling. My mother tried sweetness first. "Leah, honey, we just want to talk. It's the holidays." Then she tried guilt. "Your grandmother has been crying since you left. She thinks you hate her." Then she tried intimidation. My father left a voicemail saying if I didn't return by New Year's, they would take steps to ensure the family's financial structure is protected. That was his way of threatening me. But it also told me something critical: they were scared. Not sorry. Scared. On December 29th, Tyler showed up at my apartment. He knocked 3 times, then let himself in with a key I didn't know he had. I was sitting at my kitchen table with my laptop and about 40 pages of printed bank records. He froze when he saw them. "What is that?" he said. "Your inheritance," I said. "Or what's left of it." He tried to play it casual. "Lee, come on. Mom and Dad are a mess. Just come home, sign the agreement, and this all goes away." I closed my laptop. "Tyler, where did the $74,000 go?" His face changed. Not guilt exactly, more like the face of someone who thought a door was locked and just heard it click open. "What are you talking about? Grandma's savings. $74,000 withdrawn in 18 months. Where did it go?" He laughed, but it came out wrong. "Grandma spends her own money. That's not a crime. Grandma doesn't remember what year it is. She didn't take herself to the bank." "Who did?" He didn't answer. He just stood there, and for a split second I saw something behind his eyes that looked almost like shame. Then it disappeared, and he said, "You need to stop digging into things you don't understand. I'm a forensic accountant, Tyler. Digging into things is literally what I do for a living." He left without another word, but he forgot to take back the key. I changed my locks that afternoon. On January 2nd, I filed a formal complaint with Adult Protective Services. I submitted the bank records, the signed guarantee document from Christmas Eve, my grandmother's medical records documenting her cognitive decline, and a written statement. The caseworker called me within 48 hours. She said it was one of the most well-documented initial filings she had ever received. She also said something that made my chest tight. "Miss Brennan, in cases like this, the family often escalates when they learn an investigation has been opened. Be prepared for that." She was right. 3 days later, my mother showed up at my office. Not my apartment, my office. She walked past the reception desk, past the security badge reader, and somehow talked her way onto my floor. I looked up from my desk, and there she was, standing in the doorway of my cubicle like she had come to pick me up from school. "We need to talk about what you've done," she said. My coworker Sarah looked over the partition with wide eyes. I stood up and walked my mother to the lobby. "You cannot show up at my workplace. I wouldn't have to if you answered your phone. What do you want?" "I want you to withdraw the complaint." I looked at her. "What complaint?" She stared at me. "Don't play games. We got a letter. From the state. Do you understand what you've done to this family?" I reported what I found. "You found nothing. Your grandmother gave us permission for every single transaction. Then you have nothing to worry about," I said. Her eyes filled with tears, and for a moment I almost believed them. Then she said, "If you don't stop this, we will make sure everyone knows what kind of daughter you are." "What kind is that?" "The kind that abandons her family and tries to destroy them." I nodded slowly. "Okay. And I'm the kind that keeps records." She left. I went back to my desk and emailed my manager a heads up, just like I had planned. "There may be unusual personal contact from family members at the office. I've already taken legal steps. Just wanted you aware." My manager replied in 4 minutes. "Understood. HR has been notified. Let us know if you need anything." The investigation moved faster than I expected. APS conducted an in-home assessment of my grandmother within the week. They found exactly what I feared. She couldn't recall signing any documents. She didn't know how much money was in her accounts. She thought my mother helped her with banking, but couldn't describe what that meant. She asked the caseworker twice whether it was time for lunch. Meanwhile, I heard from my cousin Jared that the family was in full crisis mode. My father had hired an attorney not to defend against the APS complaint, but to try to get the power of attorney transferred from me to my mother. His attorney filed the motion. Marcus countered it the same day with a petition for emergency conservatorship, citing financial exploitation and cognitive incapacity. The judge scheduled a hearing for February. That hearing changed everything. My mother came dressed like she was going to church. My father wore his only suit. Tyler brought Kelsey, who clutched his arm like they were posing for a magazine cover about wholesome family values. I came with Marcus, a banker's affidavit, a doctor's deposition, and 76 pages of financial records. The judge reviewed both motions. My parents' attorney argued that the family had always managed my grandmother's finances collaboratively and that I was acting out of personal resentment following a holiday disagreement. Marcus presented the withdrawal records, the medical evidence, and the Instagram posts showing my mother at locations near the banks on the exact dates of major withdrawals. Then he showed the Christmas Eve document, the one where my grandmother's signature was used to guarantee a $95,000 loan for Tyler's business. A business, Marcus noted, that had no registered EIN, no commercial lease, and no filed tax returns, because it didn't exist yet. My brother had asked the family to extract $95,000 from me for a business that was still a PowerPoint presentation. The judge didn't rule that day, but she issued a temporary protective order placing my grandmother's finances under independent oversight. She also ordered my parents to provide a full accounting of all transactions made on my grandmother's behalf in the past 24 months. My mother sobbed quietly in the courtroom. My father stared at the wall. Tyler left before the session ended. After the hearing, things collapsed fast. The independent auditor confirmed what I had already found: $74,000 in withdrawals, with no corresponding benefits to my grandmother. No home repairs, no medical expenses, no care costs. The money had gone into a joint checking account my parents held with Tyler. From there, it went to credit card payments, a down payment on Tyler's new SUV, Kelsey's jewelry store purchases, a vacation to Cabo, and this was the one that nearly broke me: $11,000 to a wedding planner for Tyler and Kelsey's upcoming vow renewal ceremony. They had thrown themselves a party with my grandmother's retirement savings. The auditor's report triggered a referral to the district attorney's office. I didn't ask for that. I didn't have to. Once the state sees a pattern of financial exploitation of a vulnerable adult, they don't need a family member's permission to act. 2 weeks later, my parents were served. Not with a lawsuit, with a criminal investigation notice. My mother called me 19 times in 1 hour. My father sent a text that said, "This has gone too far. You need to stop this before it destroys us." I typed back one sentence: "I didn't start this." Then I put my phone on silent and made dinner. The fallout was fast and ugly and ordinary, in the way disasters always are once the adrenaline wears off. Tyler's business evaporated. No investor was going to touch a venture associated with a family under investigation for elder financial abuse. Kelsey filed for separation within the month, not because she cared about my grandmother, but because her name was on some of those transactions, and her own attorney told her to distance herself. My parents' attorney fees started stacking up. They put the Cabo timeshare on the market. My mother canceled the vow renewal. Then the church got involved, and not in the way my parents expected. Their pastor, who had known our family for 20 years, called a private meeting with my parents and told them that several congregation members had raised concerns. My parents had been soliciting informal donations from church members for Tyler's business, framing it as a community investment. When those members learned there was no registered business and the family was under investigation, they wanted answers. My mother tried to frame it as a misunderstanding. The pastor asked her to step down from the women's ministry board. That was the first time I saw my mother lose something she actually valued, not money status. Relatives started reaching out to me one by one. My Aunt Diane, who had clapped at the Christmas Eve announcement, sent me a message. I didn't know the full story. I'm sorry I didn't ask questions. My Uncle Robert admitted my father had once asked him to pressure me into co-signing a business loan 2 years earlier. He had refused but never told me. 3 cousins sent variations of, "We always knew something was off but didn't want to get involved." Jared called me directly and said, You did the right thing. It took guts. And for what it's worth, Grandma's safer now than she's been in years. That was the sentence that made me cry. Not the legal battles, not my mother's voicemails, not Tyler's manipulation. Just someone telling me the person I was trying to protect was actually protected now. In March, the court granted permanent conservatorship to an independent fiduciary. My grandmother was moved to an assisted living facility, paid for by a trust funded from the recovered assets. My parents were ordered to repay the full $74,000 in restitution. They couldn't. So they put my grandmother's house, the one my grandfather had built in 1971, the one where every Christmas and birthday and family memory lived on the market. It sold in 18 days. My mother called me one last time after the closing. She didn't yell. She sounded emptied out. "The house is gone," she said. "Everything your grandfather built. Gone because of you." "No," I said. "Gone because you stole from his wife." She hung up. I sat on my kitchen floor for 20 minutes and let myself be sad. Not for her. For the version of my family that never actually existed, but that I had spent 29 years trying to believe in. The last time I saw Tyler was in April, outside a courthouse. He was there for a procedural hearing related to the restitution order. He looked thinner. His Rolex was gone. He walked past me, then stopped and turned around. "You know," he said, "they always told me you'd take care of things. That's what they said. Leah handles it. Leah's the responsible one. Leah will figure it out." "I know," I said. "That was the problem." He nodded once, like the sentence had to pass through years of programming before it landed. "I didn't think it was that bad," he said. "Because it was good for you," I answered. He opened his mouth, closed it, and walked away. I never heard from him again. A year later, I'm sitting in a 2-bedroom apartment in Charleston, with big windows, and a rescue dog named Walter, who takes up the entire couch. I bought a small dining table that seats 4, and I fill it with people who have never once made me prove I deserve to sit there. Last Christmas, I drove to the assisted living facility and spent the afternoon with my grandmother. She didn't remember everything. She didn't remember the courtroom, or the bank records, or the night I walked out of her house with my whole family staring at my back. But when I walked in, she looked at me and said, "My name, not my mother's name, not a guess, my actual name," and reached for my hand. "My Leah," she said. And that was enough. I used to think strength meant absorbing everything your family threw at you without flinching. I thought loyalty meant protecting people who were actively harming you. I thought love required financial sacrifice under threat, public silence under humiliation, and endless proof that I was worthy of basic respect. I was wrong about all of it. The bravest thing I ever did wasn't the APS complaint, or the courtroom, or the forensic audit. It was sitting at that Christmas Eve table, surrounded by 45 people who expected me to comply, and saying, no. Not with a speech, not with a dramatic exit line I had rehearsed, just no. A plain, clear, ordinary word that shook my entire family to its foundation, because they had built that foundation on the assumption I would never say it. So when people ask me whether I regret it losing the big family Christmases, the group texts, the illusion of belonging, I tell them the truth. I don't miss the family I lost. I grieve the family I never had. And I protect the one person from that family who couldn't protect herself. If you were in my position, what would you do? Would you sign the paper and keep the peace? Would you walk away and start over? Or would you do what I did, pull the thread, and let the whole thing unravel? And here's the question that still keeps me up sometimes. If the person your family always counted on to carry everything quietly finally puts it all down, is that betrayal? Or is that the first honest thing anyone in that family has done in years?